Hi everyone, it's Rob Tech and welcome to another episode of In the Studio. Today we're going to go through my latest release, Stay With Me. So let's have a look at the project. This is a 135 BPM, kind of like a trance. I wanted to go for an early 2000s, kind of a ravey trance sound for this. I did use a lot of Jupiters. So I'm using the Jupiter 800 or 8000V, which is this one. So I use this sound for my main arpeggio, and then it comes in the MIDI like this, and then I'm able to play around with the cutoff to make it have variation. So we'll start from this beginning part, and I've only got the one note for the first part of the song, and then the second part I start to bring in the whole chord. So the right hand part of my arpeggio is the same, and the left hand just changes from E, G and C. With variations on the automation for the sound on the cutoff. So that's pretty much the main up, and that's what's carried through the song for the most part. And then I've used so many instances of the Jupiter 8000V, and we'll start off, we've got a basic drum kit. So I got my kick. Let's have a look at the kick. Just got Pro Q4 on it. Just shaping the kick. So that's the fundamentals of my drums. And then I've got a ride on each beat, syncopated open hat. I've got a reverse crash that comes into the song with another reverse cymbal. So that just helps with making the momentum occur. Then I've got other percussions, which is like a shaker. And then we'll go to the basses. So first bass is my main bass. On the main bass I do have LFO tool. And then I got Pro Q, I've got a twin tube which is giving me a bit of saturation and some harmonics. And then another Pro Q4. So that's my main bass that carries through the song and it gives it that real ravey kind of sound that I'm after for this. Then I got a bass comp, which is like a secondary bass, which is similar sound, very similar sound, but the notes is more just off the beat, hands up in the air. It's like my pool party bass that I used back in the day. So I have a LFO tool on as like a sidechain, but if I turn it off, that's why I've got it on to keep it a lot of groove. And then I'm setting it to dimension D. So this gives it a lot of groove. If I do turn the LFO tool off, then I don't really have the groove and it clash with the kick. So together I got these basses. So they all work together and they create this like real like driving kind of a rhythm. For those basses, go through the basses. So my MIDI for the basses and my instruments are down here. I'm using Electra. So if I just open up Electra, I've got one sound, which is just using synth 1. And then another Electra for my second sound. And this one is just using synth 2. So So it's the same sound on like a different synthesizer patch. So it's Electro. Electro's great because you can have up to 4 like different sounds. That's why I like using Electro a lot. And that's what starts off the beginning part of my song. On here I have a couple of Pro Qs and a Saturn. So a Saturn is like my saturator, which is really nice. Give me a bit of drive there. Next sound, let's go through. Next one I've got. This one hasn't come in for a bit. And this one coming in. Let's see where this one comes in. Not for a little while. Cool. So I've built my bass, I've got my rhythm happening. And then I bring in my first vocals, my verse. In the verse I bring in my clap. So that's my first verse, and on the vocals I've got Soothe Pro MB, I've got the 1176 or LA2A silver, and then I've got Channel Strip, I've got my favourite console, which is the 9099, which is a model of the AMEC 9098i. Then I've got a de-esser and another Soothe EQ. I'm sending it to short room, parallel compression, slap and plate verb, as well as like a big verb. Then I've got some doubles, left and right doubles that sit behind it. And then after I've come out of the verse, I bring in my pre-chorus, my next sound, which is a Jupiter 8000, and bring out the patch. It's very sorry, it's quite sizzly in parts, which is cool, makes it stand out, but I'm only using it as just a little hook that comes in and out of the different parts. This one we are going through the pre-chorus. And then I've got different doubles. And then I've got harmonies on top of that. So they're all together as a big vocal sound, and yeah, most of it's the same still. I want to keep it a driving song, so I want everything just to flow from section to section to section. So for the chorus, I do bring in some arps. Let's go through these arps. I've got another LFO tool on it. There's a lot of automation on that sound with the LFO. And yeah, it's another Jupiter 8000 for that one, which is really nice. There's this one. So I'm using the 8000 V because it's got that real old school trance vibe to it, because it was used, the physical one was used a lot back in the late 90s, early 2000s for this trance sound. So bringing that back helped with the overall tonality that I was after for this song. Then bring it into the chorus, where I've got all types of effects happening. So I've got automation here, which turns on and the level of my send effect. So I've got a delay that comes on, and then I've got extra verb that's on the Vox plate, comes up, and then I have it doubles under it.
Can't you stay with me a while? Can't you stay with me a while?
Which is really cool. And that helps with thicken the vocal up for the chorus.
Can't you stay with me a while? Can't you stay with me, stay with me?
And that's just ad-libs.
Can't you stay with me a while?
So on the main chorus, I have another AMAC. Pro Q is just EQ, a saturator, and a lot of sound effects on my verbs and delays. And now a cool thing I do when I build up into the breakdown part is I bring in a sub drop. So that sub drop is a serum sound, because I use serum for my sub drops. And which one was it? See if it loads. So my serum for my sub drop is a very simple, I have a sine, and then I've got portamento on. So if I start at a high note and then I play that note, it'll just ramp it down as a printed audio. So sub drops are very simple, but they really add that impact that I want. Which one? So it brings the impact that I need to end into the next section, which then brings in my next arpeggios that come in. And then I also bring in my pads. Which are really, really nice. And then I've got another pad that comes in, swelling in. And that pad just helps kind of morph into the next section. So I bring my breakdown, I bring my next verse Vox in. And it gives me a real nice kind of a lush breakdown. And then I come into the kind of the build, because I bring my bass in. On this, I have chopped off all the low end of the bass, so it's like a real mid bass. Good for contrast. And the next part, of course, is my plucks. Let's bring up the plucks, do a saturator and an EQ on it. So they're my plucks. So my plucks are a serum sound, and they're in serum, and this is it. And I just play around with the cutoff as automation anyway, to help build it, or yeah, just I use it to help build it, so it slowly opens up and it makes the build bigger for the drop. And that's what I did here. And then I bring in some chorus. Kind of just as like a hook.
Can't you stay with me, stay with me?
Then my drop comes in, and my big pad becomes very kind of the bass under the plucks in my like synths. So my pad sort of becomes like a lead melody in a way.
Can't you stay with me? Won't you stay, won't you stay, won't you stay with me?
I just have the ad-libs playing here at the moment, so I've kept everything else of the drop just keep playing through because I want to keep the song very driving, very momentum. It just flows, it just keeps going, and then the vocals are what change. So I've got my my chorus playing into the drop. The drop plays for a bit, then the chorus vocals come back, and then I've got these ad-lib vocals that come in. So I wanted to end it by building up. So I have in my snare build, and then my hook from the vocals come in saying "stay with me a while," and then I end that off with some extra verbs or delays, which is pretty cool. And then I've got my kick that I double up, and then I bring in my big kick verb. So it's like this huge impact to end the song. And that's my track, Stay With Me. And that concludes In the Studio with Rob Tech for my latest song, Stay With Me. Be sure to check it out on all streaming platforms.